Welcome to Our Tiny Woodland. I'm Rach, my partner Dan. We bought a tiny woodland in the UK 2 years ago, and in this video I'm going to tell you all about that journey, why we were crazy enough to do it, how much work it really is, what we've had to spend financially since buying it, the mistakes we've made, and I'm going to explore whether we would do it again. Why did we buy it in the first place? So Dan and I, from the moment we met, we knew that we both loved nature, but more importantly, we loved being outside in nature, specifically woodlands. We do love all kinds of environments out in the countryside, but woodlands, there's something about them that just gives you a warm hug. We love the idea of being off-grid, being self-sufficient. We don't live our lives at home like that. We do try and live a gentle life, ecologically friendly lifestyle. However, we loved wild camping, glamping, camping in general. And we also decided that we wanted to give back to nature. That is really important. That's at the heart of what we do. We had an allotment before because we're really interested in growing our own food. And I think what the allotment taught us is, for us personally, the straight lines that you do in an allotment, the weed clearance and everything, ours was a little bit wilder than that. We did it forest garden style. If you've ever heard of forest gardening, please look into it. It's fabulous. And we found that we were appreciating the wilder side of things. So the weeds we didn't want to pull because they were feeding the butterflies, everything like that. And we wanted somewhere that we could visit, that we could come to, that was cut off, away from technology, away from the hustle and bustle of the town that we live in, and for it just to be us. And put something back into the wild world. And finally, I think possibly one of the biggest things again, woodlands in the UK are in a dreadful state. They are in peril. I think only about 10% of the UK is now wooded, when once upon a time it would have been a vast forest. And the woodlands that are remaining are so fractured. We're losing hedgerows, so even these fractured woodlands aren't then having these wildlife superhighways to interconnect them. So what you're finding with woodlands that are left that aren't necessarily managed, or managed in the best way, is that they're becoming monocultures. The genetics aren't sort of intermingling like they should, as they do with ancient woodlands. The wildlife are living in these islands, cut off, surrounded by roads, surrounded by development, pollution. So we decided that our legacy would be, hopefully, to take on a piece of wild land and leave it in a better state when we die than when we found it. So that's why we bought woodland. How much work is it in reality? We bought the woodland, and obviously the first months, the first year was so exciting. I remember our first visit as owners. I hugged a tree, and so did Dan. So I guess you can call us tree huggers. It was magical, it was enchanting, but there was also some trepidation there, because we realised that we had bought this woodland to transform it. The woodland was only 20 years old at the time. It was still planted in the straight rows that it had been planted in. There'd been no management at all. It had been essentially left to its own devices. It still had all the tree guards on, which should have come off. So we knew we had a big amount of work ahead of us, but we also knew that we had the rest of our lives to do it. And the thing with woodlands is, although they do need management, sympathetic management, and they do need care and the intervention of humans, if you leave something for a year or 5 years, it isn't the end of the world. So in terms of the actual time that this takes us, I'll give you some examples. So when we first bought the woodland, we were here every single weekend. We were here every time we had leave from work. And we for the first year actually just documented the woodland, surveyed it, the woodland owner's golden rule. Check out our video on that. I go into that in a lot more detail. We observe the golden rule to not touch anything, not do anything, not change anything. And in that year, you wouldn't believe what we learned, because we saw it through the seasons. So we were coming, we were surveying, we used the Merlin Bird ID app to see what birds were here. We documented the wildflowers, the fungi, everything that we saw, and that then helped informed the work that we were going to do to improve it. We needed to know what was wrong so that we could actually improve it. So that first year we did that. In terms of then actual work, there is physical work. So we arrive at the woodland, and if we've not been for, you know, a few weeks, then we literally do a whole tour of the whole site, just walking, checking on things, making sure that there's been, you know, no storm damage. Are there any trees fallen that need to be brought down to ground level to be safe? And just generally doing a safety check when we arrive. So that can take 45 minutes or longer if something catches our interest. Then obviously we have a plan for the day. We normally plan what we're going to do. Woodland work always takes longer than you think it's going to. So, you know, we think we're going to do 5 jobs, we end up doing 2. So we still now, 2.5 years later, we still come, I would say on average it's every other weekend for a full day. And then we also then come when we have leave from work. And we do stay over in the forestry shelter, the little camper that we've got, to enable us to do as much work as possible while we're here. And it is hard work. So we fell trees, we scythe the rides, we do a bit of clearance, we process the wood that we have, we're building deadwood hedges for the wildlife. There is a lot of physical work. So, you know, bear that in mind, but you can use power tools. You don't have to use as many hand tools as we use. And I think with a woodland as well, you can do as much or as little as you really want to, because essentially if a woodland is owned by somebody who isn't going to wreck it, then even if you don't do any work for 10 years, at least it is in safe ownership, and it's not being developed, it's not being clear felled, all of those sorts of things. So it is a personal choice in terms of how much work you actually want to do. So what have the costs been? What money have we actually had to spend? After the initial purchase price, solicitors' fees, what then have we actually spent? So we started off coming here to spend the day, lots and lots of days. So those days meant that we needed somewhere to sit, somewhere to shelter, some way of cooking food, boiling a kettle. Now we were lucky because we were campers, so we had all of that. We had a tent, we had a tarp, we had a tripod barbecue. We brought charcoal initially because we weren't taking any wood down. We did used to collect kindling from the woodland floor to light fires. We had a kettle, we had camping mugs, but you might want to think about investing in those sorts of things. We have 3 cool boxes. One is a day size, literally just for a pack up. One is a larger one if we're coming for a very long day, and we might actually have 3 meals here. And then we do have an enormous Coleman cooler, extreme cooler I think it is, for when we come for a couple of days, just to store food and to store it safely. We did then progress to buying the camper. Talked about this a lot. It is a forestry shelter, and it's a hide for our wonderful pest controller. I'll put his link up here because he's got some fabulous videos. Some of them are actually set in the woodland, so please give him a watch. He's a great guy, really, really great guy, and he's done us a massive service by helping with the pest control. So the camper we chose was a dandy camper. It's a 1979, so it's very second-hand. It's very well loved. And that cost us £300. So we towed it to the woodland and set it up. You could, of course, just have a tarp or a tent to shelter from the rain, somewhere warm to sit, that sort of thing. But we wanted that permanent hide for the pest controller. The next things were tools. So we didn't actually need any specific tools to begin with. because we weren't felling trees, we weren't processing wood, but we did have a lot of tools. Dan's quite a handy bloke, so he's got a tool shed at home. So we started off with some bush knives, sharp knives in the sheath, which we from the very beginning started clearing the tree guards, and you have to slice them with a knife to get them off. So we started with the knives. We did buy an axe because I think it represented what we were doing more than actually ever going to use it that early on. Things like pruners, if you're wanting a specific walkway, you find that you're using a certain route and there's low hanging dead branches because there are low down. You might want some pruners to do that sort of thing. We progressed on to buying a Laplander saw. We bought a silky saw because the smaller trees we do take down by hand. One of the best things that we invested in was a festival trolley. It is the off-road one. It's sort of the hardcore version of the collapsible ones that you can get. In the early days, when we couldn't get a car in, we had to park on the lane because the ride was impassable. We used that. It was invaluable for getting our kit in because, you know, carrying everything and all the stuff that we used to bring in with us. We've also got an old wheelbarrow that's full of holes that we brought from home, and we use that for the same purposes. And then obviously as we then changed and we managed the ride, we can now get the car in right to base camp. Those trolleys are still invaluable, trolley and the wheelbarrow, for moving tree guards around, moving fallen wood. If we're making a hibernaculum or something like that, we can fill it from all around the woodland to be able to carry it around. And everything else we kind of had. Now, there are other costs, which I'll talk about in a second. But in terms of that, we also invested in fire pits, barbecue. I say invested, we bought one fire pit. We found another by the side of the road. Another one is an old washing machine drum. We have some wrought iron chairs that we also found by the side of the road. Well, it was outside somebody's house actually. We knocked on and asked if we could have them, and they said yes, they're there for the scrap man, so you take them. We've begged and we've borrowed, and a lot of very, very kind people who know that we've got woodland will have maybe outdoor furniture or tools or, you know, things like that. We've just been gifted a pond liner, and they will say, do you want it for the woodland? So it's absolutely great. Loads and loads of kind people out there helping. So yeah, that's kind of the money that we've spent on buying. One last thing is fuel, traveling to the woodland. Obviously factor that in, because depending on how far it is, it might be a cost that you need to keep an eye on. On to the mistakes that we've made. I'd like to say that we're perfect, but we ain't. We really ain't. The first mistake that we made was siting base camp in the wrong area. The woodland was planted so that it had rides and glades. So there are areas already that aren't planted with trees. And we chose a glade up to the north of the woodland because it felt more private, but we could also see out onto the fields. And it was absolutely lovely because we sort of bought the woodland in February, and then very quickly spring came upon us. Beautiful little glade with sunshine, sat in your camping chairs enjoying it. The following winter, the first winter that we came into, we realised that the westerly winds blowing in off the field were just so harsh, and this is South Lincolnshire. It is flat, so those winds can really get up, and we made the mistake of siting base camp there, and it was just too cold, really too cold. Thankfully we hadn't cut any trees down, we hadn't done anything, changed anything on that particular area, so we didn't sort of, you know, ruin it to use it as base camp. But we then realised that we needed to move base camp further into the woodland behind a few layers of trees, to protect from the wind, because it is always windy here. So that was mistake number one, but we managed to get through that. Another mistake that I still feel really guilty about is we have chickens at home, and every year at Halloween we give them pumpkin because it's a natural dewormer. And so I brought a spare pumpkin here and left it by the wildlife pond, so that it could capture on the wildlife cam, near the pond, hopefully to capture animals eating the pumpkin. And it was the next day we got home and something came up on my Instagram feed because it was Halloween saying how poisonous pumpkin is. I think it was specifically to hedgehogs, but possibly, you know, not the great best thing to be bringing into a woodland from outside, could have pests in it, all sorts. And I actually drove to the woodland one morning to collect it and just went straight home. That's all I came here to do because I felt so guilty about it. You know, that was a big mistake that I will learn from. Um, the other mistake, well, not a mistake because we didn't act on it, but the urge to come in and start work as soon as you take ownership of a woodland has got to be resisted. You might want to fell trees to use the wood, use it as timber. You might want to start making a pond straight away. You know, all of those things. And we didn't make this mistake because we had been given some really good advice about the woodland owners golden rule, but we did make the mistake of feeling under pressure. And I think 2 months into ownership we had a stern talking to ourselves and said, look, we are going to be looking after this woodland for the rest of our lives. Let's just slow down, because we were, you know, think where we're going to put that, what we're going to do with this, wonder what's there, oh, where are we going to start. It all, you know, did get to a bit of a fever pitch where we thought, what on earth have we taken on? There is more than we can ever cope with, manage, just the two of us. And we do get help from other people, don't get me wrong, but you don't like asking for help. We always wait for people to volunteer. So I think, you know, the mistake we made was to put too much pressure on ourselves to make it into the perfect nature reserve within a year. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. And it should be done slowly and gently so that all the wild creatures and everything can just get used to the changes. Speaking of making changes, what have we done since we bought it? So part of the surveying period was we installed the wildlife cameras to give us an idea of the inhabitants. So we were lucky enough to see all of the foxes that visit, the badgers, the owls, all of the birds. We have a couple of amber list, red list birds that visit the woodland. And then obviously we quickly became aware of the pest species that were visiting the woodland. Now, this is a very contentious issue, and I completely understand why people believe that it's wrong to cull pest species. As woodland owners, when you see the destruction, and I mean destruction and damage, that pest species can do to trees, you start to feel a bit differently about these fluffy creatures that are cute and entertaining. And we had to really do a lot of soul searching because we knew that if we didn't manage them, we would lose most of this woodland because it's 20 years old. It's in the danger period for when the grey squirrels like to strip trees. A lot of the canopy is quite low, so the deer is still grazing on that. So we do manage the pest species specifically for this woodland because we did the surveys, we know what we've got. Number one is the grey squirrels, hence our pest controller. We looked into different ways of managing those. Some of them are not what I would call wildlife friendly, not that culling is ever wildlife friendly in that sense, killing an animal. However, dray poking and things like that I didn't like the idea of. So we actually have our pest controller who does shoot them from feeders. And I'm going to do a video all about this because I really want people to understand. If you've ever seen a red squirrel with squirrel pox, it takes them 2 weeks to die, and they are our native endangered species, and it's the greys that bring that in. The greys also do damage to wood, to trees. They strip the bark. They also eat songbird babies. However, I don't want to cause them any pain, and the idea is the best way to go is they're on the peanut feeders. They're having the best meal of their life, and they do not know what's coming because our pest controller is hidden in the hide, and they literally just don't see it coming. So best way to go, in our opinion. The muntjac as well. So muntjac are non-native. Sorry, there's a fly on the camera. You see it? The muntjac are non-native. They are considered such pests that they don't actually have a shooting season. So things like roe, red deer have specifically strict seasons of when people can shoot the game. Muntjac do not have a season. They are considered so, such a pest species. We have muntjac here who do strip, they fray the bark on the trees. They are lovely, cute creatures. We've had a lot of babies being born in the woodland, but there are too many to sustain the population. And like I say, they are doing damage. So we are managing those as well. Other things that we've done, we began managing the rides. So we have one long ride, very long ride, southern ride, and then we have middle ride. They were planted like that specifically to be woodland access. They were very overgrown when we took on the woodland, very, very high grasses. And as a result of that, the ground underneath was very damp, very boggy. So we wanted to get a car in. One day we might need to get timber out. So we sectioned off and we only manage a portion of the ride because we leave the other to the wildlife, and we started scything it. And that has brought massive benefits already in just 2 years. So just the last couple of days that we've been coming here, we have seen so many new species of butterflies and all of that. And a new flora is starting to come into the woodland because we're mosaicing that habitat. So already we're seeing the fruits of our labours. We've started thinning trees. We got a felling licence approved to thin the trees out because they're very choked. They've all grown very, very tall and very, very thin. And what we want to do is sort of there's halo thinning, which is a specific management technique, but also just generally thin it out so that more sunshine can come down. The trees can start to sort of grow outwards a little bit and then therefore be more valuable to wildlife. And the base layer, the woodland floor, can hopefully spring a little bit more back to life, bring those grasses, bring the flowers that are really valuable to wildlife. We put a tiny paddling pond in, one of those little hard shell structures that you buy for the kids in the back garden. We put that in very early on as a water source and to capture the wildlife coming in, and that it continues to be a success, and we won't get rid of that. We have dug a larger pond, which I'm going to be documenting as well, purely to provide a water source for the wildlife. And the frogs and the newts, and hopefully we can encourage all of that. We have now got a permanent base camp. We have a swampy area on one side of the woodland, and as I said earlier on, we have the area that's very, very open to the winds, and we've picked an area, took a few trees down as part of the thinning anyway, and now we have a permanent base camp, which is central. It's in the centre of the woodland, so any part of the woodland we need to go to, it's really well placed to be able to do that. We've put the compost toilet in because that's just, we want to be civilised. And we have very recently had our woodland management plan approved. Now, you don't need a woodland management plan. I'm not saying everybody should have one. We wanted one specifically to make sure we're doing things right because the Forestry Commission have to sign it off. There is now grant funding available to get that paid for, so it hasn't cost us anything. The felling licence is free as well, but the woodland management plan, the services of the wonderful forestry professional that we used, I'll pop their details up here for you, was all paid for. So we learnt a lot. We figured out a lot of things that we weren't sure about, and now the woodland management plan has been signed off. So it feels amazing to be official and actually have a plan, a tick list, a to-do list of what we need to be doing over the next 10 years. So that really does help crystallise things. So finally, the question is, would we do it again? If we had the knowledge, the experience, the hindsight that we have now, I think you can probably guess from my unadulterated enthusiasm about this place that yes, of course we would. We would do it again in a heartbeat. And I've said before, our only regret is not having done it sooner. I really deeply, both of us deeply regret not doing it sooner. We thought it was a crazy thing to do. Normal people don't buy woodland just for the sake of it. It doesn't bring us an income. We currently get no income from this woodland at all. We have just invested in it money and time. But we would do it again. Would we do things differently? Probably not. No. We have made mistakes. We wouldn't make those again, but we would go through exactly the same process. So if, for example, we were in a position to buy another woodland, and trust me, you know, that we might do that in the future if we decide to, if funds allow. If we bought another woodland, we would still go in, not touch anything for a year. We would actually probably leave it 2 years. We would simply have a basic setup where we went in with the camping chairs every time, leave no trace, and just survey and watch, listen and learn. We would definitely, you know, do it again. So whether it's your dream, if it's your dream, we hope it comes true. We really do. It was our dream for so long, and we didn't know if it was going to come true or not, and it did. Feel very lucky and very privileged. Whether you're on the journey, whether you're searching for woodland, whether you're just even at the point of considering it, please have a browse through all of our videos on this channel. We are going to continue posting, so there's more to come, but hopefully you'll get an idea of what the realities really are of owning and managing woodland. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.